Hey guys, Christina here, and today I'm really excited to be taking part in a Canadian parent homeschool tag. I'm joining with parents from 6 other channels here on YouTube to answer questions about homeschooling in Canada. So there is Bonnie from the Koala Mom in BC, Cassandra from Life in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, Melissa from Melissa Oaks in Alberta, Julie from Mama to 5 in Ontario, Amanda and Stefan from Raising A to Z in Ontario, and Destiny and Michelle from Love Makes Family Grow in PEI. And like I said, I'm Christina, I am in Alberta, and I am a mom to 5 children between the ages of 4 and 13. So I'm gonna jump right in with my questions I have right here. The first one is, why did you decide to homeschool? For us, it was kind of a slow progression until things kind of just all fell in line. We never planned to homeschool. My 3 oldest children actually were in public school in a French immersion program. They'd been going between 1 and 4 years. And there were things during that time that kind of made us go, or we didn't really agree with, or we wondered why, or we didn't have the best experience. There were a lot of great things too, but there were just some things that didn't quite sit right. I had a child who was really struggling, but his teacher was so overwhelmed with kids who were struggling even more, he just wasn't able to get the help he needed. I had another child who was really bored. He would get his work done and the teacher really didn't have much for him to do. And I had one child who would just race through his work and talk. He was a social butterfly and was always being told this wasn't the place to socialize. So there was that going on. Also, the school had an early release on Friday, so they would get out like, I think 11:25, somewhere around there. And we were always feeling like we were hanging around for school to get out. My husband had Fridays off at that time, and so we wanted to go out to the mountains or go do something, or even to like go grocery shopping or get errands done. I had to work around that early release, which was frustrating. In combination with that, my youngest, the school they were at was a K-3. So my oldest was set to move to the middle school, and it was grades 4 to 9. And I just didn't feel like that age gap, or that it was just too much. And they did try and keep the kids separated a little bit, but I had other friends whose kids went to the school, and I knew there were certain issues, and I just didn't feel that developmentally my son was ready to be with kids who were so much older than him. So that was a concern to us. Also, we were in Calgary at the time, and we had to pay a noon supervision fee. I think it was $2.50 per child, and that was for 4 days a week, just to stay on school property at lunchtime, no food or anything. And so I had been bringing my children home for lunch. So I was doing 4 trips a day to the school with a toddler at home. And the middle school was changing its lunchtime, and so they weren't going to line up anymore. So that wasn't going to be an option. So we either had to pay for one child, the older one, to stay at school, but I was still going to be doing 4 trips a day for lunch with the other kids. And then on top of that, I was expecting our 5th child a week before school started. And I had had my 4th child exactly a week before school started, and I knew how hard it was to have a baby, especially through the winter. There was nowhere to like pick kids up or drop them off, no parking lot, no parent line or anything. So we'd park blocks away. I'd have to get, baby and toddler out, walk in the cold, like really cold. It just was really, logistically was looking kind of like a nightmare. There had also been some changes to legislation, and some of the rights of parents have been taken away. For kids who go to public school, like kids can actually leave school property without parents' permission, without them even knowing, in fact. And so everything came together, and we said, let's just spend 1 year homeschooling. Let's pull them out. If it messes them up, at least they're young enough they can recover. And so that's what we did, and it ended up working really, really well for us. The reason we've continued to homeschool, this is our 5th year that we're finishing now, is because we have so much freedom. Freedom in our schedule. My kids can be kids. They can play a lot more, be more creative, follow their own interests. We can add things into the curriculum, take things out that we don't feel they're ready for. We've been able to tailor things, that one-on-one experience. So my child who was really struggling with reading, I was able to do one-on-one with him, and he is doing great now. My son, who is, especially in math, really advanced and bored, he's moved ahead levels now. So we've been able to really tailor it to our kids and be able to focus on our family. I mean, my 4-year-old has never had a day without his siblings home and around, and that's pretty amazing. And I've seen the difference in the relationship. So that was a long answer, but that's why we started homeschooling, and that's why we continue to homeschool. So question number 2, how long do you plan to homeschool for? At this point, we plan to homeschool until our kids all graduate. We do have a number of diploma options here in Alberta. Kids can get like an Alberta diploma, they can get a homeschool diploma, they can just finish school, they can write a GED. There's a lot of options, and barring something significantly changes, we plan to just homeschool. Our kids enjoy it, they like it, so we always take input from them, but that's our plan. Number 3, how much does homeschooling cost? This is kind of a hard question to answer. It really depends on your philosophy, the ages of your children, their grades, how much you have available, resources. For us, we receive $850 per child from grade 1 to grade 12 in Alberta, or I should say reimbursable up to $850 for educational expenses. It's very regulated. So I try and stay within that, but that is, our supervising authority does it as a family account. So it's not like I spend $850 on each child. I spend the total amount I have that year on all our children. So things like, I recently bought math for my son going in grade 9, and it was about $300. But because he's the oldest, it costs more, whereas the next children in line, it's gonna cost virtually nothing for that level. So hopefully that makes sense. Like, I try and stay within the amount we're given. I did look up how much I went over this year because I do put a little bit extra in, and I was curious. And so I looked in from September to March. I had spent $20.78. So that kind of gives you an idea. Now for preschool, kindergarten, it's not covered. I would say I spend between $50 and $100, maybe $150. That's a very high guess though. Yeah, that's a high guess for that. So it really kind of depends. I can tell you that it costs a lot less to homeschool than it did when my children were in public school. Between activity fee, supply fee, lunch, noon supervision, fundraising, and all the extras, it costs us a lot more than homeschooling does. So number 4, how much time does it take? It's changed a lot depending, again, on the ages of my children, their grades, and so forth. Right now, it takes me personally most of the day, 4 days a week. And that's me sitting down and doing work with my children. They're not here all the time. So like my youngest, preschool, I would say 15 minutes a day of that. Kindergarten, you know, maybe 20, 30 minutes. And it kind of goes up. I'd say my son who's in grade 8 this year, he probably spends 3, maybe 3.5 hours total doing schoolwork, but it's mostly my time because I have to rotate through 5 different levels and 5 different children. One other thing I should add is the prep time involved in home educating. I spend time in the evenings preparing, I spend time on the weekends preparing, I spend time writing program plans, looking up resources, purchasing, pulling things together, planning our schedules, so there is all that prep time as well. Number 5, what is it like homeschooling in your province or territory? Alberta is quite regulated, but they're also very supportive of home education. We actually don't have the term homeschooling in Alberta, it's home education. We have a Home Education Act. Excuse me. I can post a video up top if you're interested. I've done a whole video on the different options because here in Alberta, we have parent responsibility, we have teacher responsibility, we have distance education, we have shared responsibility. There's a whole variety of options, and we are parent-led home education. That's how all of my children, my 4, I should say, are registered, because you don't register your children until grade 1, so my youngest is not registered. But you work with a facilitator who is a registered teacher, and you submit a program plan, and then you have 2 visits each year with your facilitator. Under parent-led, I choose curriculum, outcomes, how I'm going to evaluate. So it's very much on me. They're just there to support. And the last few have actually been over Zoom or phone just because of the way the world is. But typically she would come to our home and spend a couple hours talking to the kids, looking at their work, asking me questions, filling out any paperwork, like that. Number 6, what about socialization? What about it? I always laugh when people ask me this question because I understand I asked the same question when I was first looking at home education, but I kind of answer the question the same way, like, what did you do before your kids went to school, or what do you do as an adult, right? Your kids get socialization by playing with kids on the block, by attending sports or recreation or church activities, by going to the grocery store, the library, the post office, visiting with family. In our family, there's 7 of us. They get a lot of socialization. So for us, that's really just not an issue. This year has been very different. Right now, my daughter is doing a virtual Lego club, and my kids are doing a virtual activity through church every now and then, and we do online church. Other than that, they have not done any activities. Typically, they would be doing piano lessons, they would be doing a sport, and they would usually be part of some kind of club at the library. So socialization really isn't an issue at all. Number 7, what does your schedule look like? So again, it's changed a lot over the years and ages of kids. I don't have any kids who nap right now, and I've got 5 different levels to get through. So right now my kids get up and do independent work in the morning. They have breakfast. They continue with their independent work. I mark everything that I can. Then they do corrections. We do group work in the morning where we do a read aloud and one of our group subjects, things like history, geography, science, such as that. We have lunch, and then I spend the afternoon rotating through each child, going through math and language arts, and my oldest is doing science on his own, do that with him. That's what it looks like most of the time, and that's 4 days a week. Our 5th day is usually read aloud, and they have some more independent work. It kind of changes with the seasons though too. I find as the weather gets nicer, we tend to sometimes do work in the evenings so we can spend part of the day outside. Or personally, I like to wrap things up by the end of May, and so things are already winding down for us and we have a little bit more time to go outside and spend time outside. Number 8, what is your style or your curriculum choices? I would say, I guess, I'm a classical homeschooler. I think we do have set subjects for math and English for each child, and we do read a lot of literature. However, I am a bit more interest-led when it comes to the older kids. Once our kids get to that grade 8, grade 9 level, they start choosing their own science, their own history, what they're interested in, because I feel like at that point they've done the overview and now they can dig deeper into what they're interested in, which they will hopefully retain more of. I've tried a lot of curriculums, and again, if you look on my channel, I've reviewed all of them. But we pretty much stick with the Good and the Beautiful for language arts now, Saxon for math, Story of the World for the younger and middle school years for like history, the Story of Canada and some other resources for Canadian history, French, Duolingo, and some other things, although haven't found any great books I love. Science, either Apologia or The Good and the Beautiful. That's one I kind of bounce back and forth between. Typing, The Good and the Beautiful, and online programs. What am I missing? Health, we do a lot of the What to Do When books, as well as the maturation unit from The Good and the Beautiful. I think I covered everything. So a lot of the things are set. I found ways to kind of make it work for each child, even though each child's a little different and learns differently. But overall, it kind of works for our family. So number 9, what do you do or what will you do when there's a subject that you either don't know or you don't like? You know, I learn with my kids, and I think that's one reason why I do enjoy homeschooling, because I have always loved learning and I get the opportunity to continue my own learning. So if there's something I don't know, I mean, there's answer books, there's websites, there's Facebook groups, community members. My One of my neighbors is a grade 12 biology teacher, so she's a fantastic resource for anything to do with biology. You know, we work it out together. If there's a topic I don't particularly like, I try and make it interesting, but I have to remember that just because I don't like something doesn't mean my kids don't like it. So I try to find things that entertain them and that help them to learn, but can keep me entertained as well, I guess. Number 10, how do you find time for yourself or get a break? That's a really good question. When my kids were younger, they would go to bed earlier and I'd have time in the evenings. Now some of them stay up as long as me or longer on the weekends, so that's not an option. But I try and find time, like I work out in the mornings. The kids know that that is my time. I have my earphones in, I'm watching a show or listening to music. They know that's my time every day. Sometimes I'll do the same thing when I'm making dinner. If I've kind of set them up with something else, they know I'm listening to my music. Other things, like I like to read, I make YouTube videos, I like to garden, I like to be creative. Sometimes I'll just go like to the post office for a drive for 10 minutes or to the library just to have a few minutes of quiet. My husband is also very supportive of home education. He really sees the value in it and supportive of me. So he'll help with schoolwork in the evening so I have more time during the day, or he'll like take the kids out. Anything like that. Sometimes I take a bath, anything I can kind of find. But I do enjoy home educating and it does fill my soul. And so I find like that's not necessarily a break from my kids, but sometimes that's really exciting for me to learn as well. So those are the answers to the 10 questions. Again, I'm really excited to hear everyone else's answers to these questions. You can find a link in the description box below to the playlist where you can hear everyone else's answers, and I hope you'll take time to do that. If you have any questions for me, feel free to leave them in the comments section. Otherwise, I hope that this finds you having a great day. Take care.